Hi, my name is Dr. Michael Ryan. I'm the vertebrate paleontologist here at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, and you've joined me today downstairs in the basement where my collections are. As a vertebrate paleontologist, I'm in charge of all the fossils of animals with backbones. Those include things like whales, humans, dinosaurs, amphibians, and fish. So I'm frequently asked, when did I know that I wanted to become a vertebrate paleontologist? Well, I'm not sure I ever wanted to be a vertebrate paleontologist, but I know I wanted to be a dinosaur paleontologist. And that happened to me before I could probably talk, according to my mother, who says I was already collecting dinosaur toys at that time. And when I was in kindergarten, my teacher read us a book called The Enormous Egg, which I highly recommend, all about a young boy who, I won't give away the plot, comes into the possession of a triceratops, which he raises and eventually donates to the Smithsonian in Washington. In addition to that, I saw the original movie King Kong, the 1933 good version, and those things shaped my imagination for the wonder of the world and what was out there beyond the confines of the city that I was living in. It was my gateway into the natural world. As a vertebrate paleontologist, I have many aspects to my job. Probably the thing that you'll be most familiar with is going out to collect fossils in the field. And a large part of my job involves doing just that. I field programs that range from Argentina, Canada, Montana, Mongolia, China, Greenland. And I spend part of my year going to each one of those localities with a larger field crew and collecting fossils, many of which come back here to Cleveland for preparation and research. So in the vertebrate paleontology collections at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, we're really famous for the fossil sharks and the fossil arthrodires, which are found in the greater Cleveland area. If you walk into the watersheds of these areas, you'll see the gray shales that are eroding down as the rivers run through those areas. And if you pick up some of those gray shales, you might be lucky enough to find a bit of black fossilized bone on one of those slabs. Those could be part of an ancient shark, or like Clydastes, or it could be part of an arthrodire fish, an animal known as Dunkleosteus, which was very similar to a shark, but not quite the same. And if you come here to the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, you'll have an opportunity to see some of these articulated skulls of these great bony headed animals that swam in the oceans here 370 million years ago. Additionally, we have one of the coolest theropod dinosaurs in the world, a very small Tyrannosaurus related to Tyrannosaurus rex. We have the holotype skull of Nanotyrannus. This holotype skull is less than a yard long, and we believe it's from a teenaged Tyrannosaur, probably 12 to 13 years of age. That's all we found of the specimen. It was a beautiful skull sitting on the edge of a hoodoo. One of the things that most people don't realize is that fossilized bones are actually very fragile. Although they've been fossilized, essentially turned to rock, they're very delicate. If you drop them, they would shatter like glass. So to protect them, we put a large burlap and plaster jacket over top of them. So as we find a dinosaur or a series of bones laying on the ground, we can't just pick them up. They would break on the way back to the museum. The white jacket that you can see around the specimen is what we call a field jacket, and it actually is what we used when we collect the specimen. So for this little dinosaur, we dug a trench around the margin where we believed it was, probably about 2 or 3 feet, so we know that we'd be deep underneath the specimen. We then brought bags of burlap out on our backs, and we mixed them up with water, which we also carried very far away from the cars. Mix those together, and then we cut burlap strips into the wet plaster, and we wrapped these around the specimen. In the sun, those burlap strips dried to a very hard surface. And eventually, after we put 4 or 5 layers on, we can flip that specimen over, cover the bottom, and then we have a nice transport jacket. We take that back here to the museum in Cleveland. We use an angle grinder to cut it in half. We pop the cap off, and then we can actually prepare down through the rock to the fossilized bone that's underneath it. We've gone fairly far with the specimen. We're actually removing the individual fossilized bones, and then we'll reassemble the skeleton and hopefully fill in the missing pieces with some casts from some other animals, and then put this on display for people to look at. As a scientist, wherever I go, I get questions about dinosaurs and fossils. And if you or your families have any questions about those things, you're welcome to reach me through the museum's website, CMNH.org. Look for the Vertebrate Paleontology Department, and I'd be happy to respond to any interesting questions you might have, or point you to things that you may not know about out on the web or in the libraries that you might want to read or look at.